Struggling to nail that perfect Houston Cold editing style? Well, you are in the right place. In this video I'm going to show you exactly how to recreate the animation you are seeing on screen right now, frame by frame, inspired straight from one of Houston Cold's iconic edits. And the best part? I have included all the assets and the full project file for free, just check the description below. This isn't just another tutorial, we are diving deep into advanced motion design techniques, breaking them down step by step. So if you are ready to level up your editing game, let's jump right in. Okay guys, so let's start creating this animation as always from creating new composition. Let's name that main. Let's go with full HD but reverse, frame rate to 30 and duration to 10 seconds, click OK. And after that, first thing which we want to add to our composition is of course this 3D cube with this symbol on the front wall. So let's create that. First what we want to do is to go to rectangle tool here. Okay, perfect. Now stroke to none in stroke options and fill to this type of gray, so it should be really like dark gray, but it shouldn't be exactly dark color, just something like this. Okay, perfect. And now we can create this rectangle shape layer. It should be probably in this size. Now we can center this on screen. We can also center another point here. And then what we want to do is to click here to make from this 2D layer 3D layer. Okay, exactly like that. Then let's duplicate this shape layer. And then we want to place our another point exactly here. So you can do that manually just by clicking here and changing this like that. Or if you have Motion Tools V2 or Motion Tools Pro, you can just click here like that. Okay, perfect. And now let's go to rotation. Let's go to X rotation and change that to -90. Okay, perfect. And what we actually did was that we created floor for our cube. And now let's copy our front wall of cube one more time again, and then again go to rotation. But first of course let's change another point, this time to this position, not this. So let's do it, and then we can back to our rotation, and this time I want to change rotation to 90, not -90. So we created another wall for our cube. Okay, let's copy our front wall one more time again, and this time I will want to change position here. Go to position, go to Z position, so this last one, and just change that to create our another wall. Okay, perfect. Now let's copy this wall, and now let's change another point to exactly this position here. So I will go to Motion Tools and I will click here. Then let's go to rotation. Let's go to this rotation and let's set here 90. Okay, exactly like that. And now just one more wall left, this one. Okay, so to create that, let's copy this one more time again. Okay, and this time let's place our another point exactly here. So by clicking there, then go to rotation and change this rotation to -90, exactly like that. And now we have our cube done. Okay, I think that we can do two things right now. Firstly, let's create new camera and let's already link new null to this camera. And also let's select all elements that are creating our 3D cube and let's link them to one null. So thanks that we will be able to control position, rotation and so on of our cube just by changing this on this null. Okay, now also I want to show you that also our cube was kinda red, and it's because that I added here red light. So we definitely need to do that to give our cube like this red kinda color effect. But before that, let's add here also this symbol on our front wall. Okay, so let's create new text layer, and I will use here Helvetica regular, this one. Let's change color to white. Let's make this 3D layer. Okay, and let's move this exactly there. Let's make that bigger. Okay, exactly something like this. Also, to prevent future glitches that can happen, because position of our symbol and position of our front wall is the same, so it can just create some glitches from my experience. So I just want to change here position to probably something like -2. Okay, now actually we can create that light. So let's create new light. Here we have this option, color to this type of red. We want to create spotlight. Okay, then click OK. Now, as you can see, our symbol is red also. That's because our light is working on that text layer also, but we can change that here in material options in this text layer. Here you have something like accept slides, and it's on right now. So of course this layer accepts lights, and it's use that if there is any light. But when we will off that, as you can see, it's not accepting any light anymore. Okay, now let's change some settings here also. Firstly, let's go to light options and intensity. Let's change that to like 320. Then also go to transform here, and let's change here point of interest to like 1000, and here position to like 800, here to like 1800, and here to like -1100. Okay, perfect. Now when our spotlight is set up, we can start creating first movement here. So I want to create this zoom in along with rotation for cube, and then also we have rotation for camera along with new text. So let's just add all of that. We'll start from our out zoom, of course. Let's go to null, that is linked to camera. Let's go to position here. Let's create first keyframe at start, second keyframe at 2-second mark. Okay, then go to first keyframe, and let's change position to something like that. Then go to graph editor, and let's create this graph. Okay, now it's perfect. Then also we need to add rotation for our cube. Let's go to null, that is controlling our 3D cube, and also let's firstly, of course, link our symbol to this null. It's element of our 3D cube as well. Then go to rotation and go to X rotation. Let's set that to 15 and Z rotation to like 10. And by the way, X rotation to -15, not 15. Yeah, it should be like this. And now let's go to start. And let's create first keyframe for this rotation. Then let's go to around 2-second mark, probably something like this. And let's create second keyframe. Then go to first keyframe, and let's set here rotation to -30. Then let's go to second keyframe, and let's set here the second keyframe to 15. Okay, now let's go to graph editor. Let's go to value graph, and let's create smooth graph that should look exactly like this. Okay, perfect. Okay, as you can see, it looks exactly like we wanted. Now let's also add this camera rotation along with text and this strokes right there. So let's add that. Firstly, maybe start from camera rotation. First, we want to choose a place which is going to be position where our rotation is going to have a peak on graph. It should be probably something like here. Let's mark this place on timeline. Okay, now let's link another null to this null. Then let's go to rotation. Let's create first keyframe probably somewhere here for the rotation, and second for the rotation probably here. Okay, and on our first keyframe let's leave amount on 0, but on our second keyframe, let's change that rotation to -15. Now let's go to graph editor and let's create really smooth graph, nothing crazy and sharp, just something like this. Okay, also there is a little zoom right there with this rotation, so let's add here zoom as well. First keyframe of our zoom should be probably somewhere here. Of course, we need to go to position to create first keyframe for position. Second keyframe probably like here. Okay, and on our second keyframe we need to add here zoom to something like that probably. Okay, now let's go to speed graph and let's create graph like this. It should be a little sharper than our rotation, but not very sharp as well, something like that. Let's see how it looks like. Okay, it looks perfect, nothing less, nothing more. Okay, now let's add text and strokes. Let's add first text, let's add text layer. Let's change font to Gratelos and let's write I would have, exactly like that. Now let's create 3D layer from this 2D layer. Okay, and now as you can see we also need to go to material options again and off accept slide option here. Now also let's change the rotation in the final moment. It should be rotated like this. Okay, now perfect. Also let's change color of our text to this a little dark red. Now go to position and change this position to something like that, so it will be under our 3D cube. Okay, and this text along with animation for that should appear somewhere here. Okay, and for animation I'm going to use text evo script. First click here on based on mode and change that to words, then click here add text evo. Okay, perfect. And then go to transform, go to opacity and change that to 0. Okay, I'm going to go to text evo one more time and click here and change to words because it didn't apply. Okay, then delay to 9 probably. Okay, and animation for our first text is basically ready. Now let's duplicate that and let's place duplicated text layer exactly on 1 second mark. Then let's move that down and instead of I would have, we want to write here healed for. Okay, let's place that probably here. Now only strokes left for this, so let's go to pen tool, then go to fill and in fill options let's select none, then go to stroke and let's use this red color. Okay, perfect. Then let's create first stroke. It should be something like that. By the way, let's set pixels for stroke to like 8. It should be something like that. Then let's duplicate that and then let's make 3D layer from this. Okay, perfect. We can change position, make that smaller, you know, just adjust everything. Okay, perfect. Now let's duplicate that. Let's move that on the left and let's just make this line a little shorter to something like that, exactly like in example. Okay, let's go to the first stroke and let's create a new trim path animation for that. Let's go to add, go to trim path. Okay, now let's go probably somewhere here and let's create first keyframe for end. Then let's go somewhere here and let's create second keyframe for end. Okay, then go to first keyframe and let's set that to 0. Okay, now let's go to graph editor, go to value graph editor and let's do really smooth, not very sharp graph, probably something like this. Okay, perfect. Now let's copy this and apply to our second stroke. Go to trim path now and let's set start to 100 now and to 100 on our first keyframe and on our second keyframe to 0. Okay, so you know it's reversed right now. Okay, like you can see, it looks perfect. Now we just need to duplicate these two shape layers. Okay, let's duplicate that. Then let's move that on the right side. And then let's do a little trick here. Let's link them to one null. Then go to rotation for that null. Let's go to this rotation and let's change that to 180. Okay, perfect. And now let's place that also in right place. Okay, perfect. Now we can just delete this null. We will not need that again. Okay, and this is exactly what we are looking for. As you can see, it's almost ready. Now what we want to do is to create this in zoom along with this 2 years ago text and then second part of our animation. Okay, so now let's create this in zoom along with cube animation. Okay, so of course let's link another null to this null, and peak of our second very important movement should be probably at around 2-second mark. Probably here, let's mark this location on timeline, then go to position. Let's create first keyframe for this position to probably maybe even here, and second on third second time. Okay, like that. And then let's change position on second keyframe to probably something like this. Okay, I'm not going to create graph for now. Now I just want to create animation for our cube. It's like out animation, we can say. Okay, so let's maybe start from our front wall of cube. Let's go to position of this cube and let's create first keyframe probably somewhere here and second somewhere there. Okay, now on second keyframe, let's change position to something like that. Okay, perfect. Now also we can create here speed graph. It should be something like this, so not very sharp, but sharp a little still. Now let's copy this and let's place that on our symbol as well, because actually position of our symbol is the same. Okay, like that. Now actually we can also create graph for our in zoom animation. Also should be something like this. Okay, we can actually go to position for our front wall and let's change that to maybe something like -700 even. Of course, we need to copy that to our symbol as well. Now it looks perfect. Also, this in zoom can be even huger, something like that. Now let's do exactly same out animation for the rest of our walls of our cube. Let's start from this one. Let's create two keyframes exactly in same places as for our first wall. Okay, and on our second keyframe, let's change this position as well, probably to something like that. Be perfect. Let's add here exactly same graph, so something like this. Now let's go to another wall. Let's create two keyframes. Let's change position of second keyframe to something like that. Let's also use exactly same graph. Go to another wall, create two graphs. But actually, as you can see, we can't do anything with this wall, because if we'll change position there, we'll be still see this on screen. So we just want to cut this wall. I'm talking about this exact wall somewhere in animation. Probably we want to cut this exactly somewhere here. Just cut that, delete. Okay, it will be perfect. So we can move to our another wall to which we want to add our out animation. Let's create two keyframes for this wall as always. Let's change position to something like this. Perfect. Then let's add here this graph, same graph as always. Okay, now we have last wall, last element. It's here. Let's create two keyframes for position and let's just do same thing again. Okay, let's change position, then go to graph editor and let's create this same graph as for every wall. Okay, it should be something like this. Yeah, for me it looks perfect. Now, as well as you can see, we have out zoom animation for our text also. There is just fastbox blur with opacity, so it's a lot of smoother than right now. So let's go to our first text and let's add here fast box blur effect, and after that let's create first keyframe for our blur, and let's place that maybe here, second keyframe maybe there, and on our second keyframe let's change blur radius to like 25. Okay, also let's create value graph, pretty sharp one, probably something like this. Okay, perfect. Now also let's add here opacity, transition. Let's create two keyframes at exact same places where our keyframes for blur radius, and on our second keyframe let's put opacity to 0. Okay, let's copy these two things, opacity and also fast box blur, to our second text. Okay, and as you can see, we still here see these two elements of cube, so we need to adjust that. Okay, so it's this one. We need to change here position a little more on the left. Okay, and for this one also more on the right. Okay, and here as you can see, it's almost ready. Now just we need to add text here, 10 years ago, and it will be our last thing which we need to do. So to do that, of course, let's just create new text layer. Let's use Provincially as our font, and let's write 10 years ago. Okay, let's click here, all caps. Then let's change color to white. Let's make that smaller. Also, let's put dots on the end of this sentence. Okay, now we can create 3D for this layer. Okay, perfect. Now, of course, let's go to material options and let's click here, change that accept slides to off. So this layer essentially will not accept any light. Okay, now let's also adjust rotation. Okay, you can put that here, and then go to position and let's change position to probably something like this. Let's also make that a little smaller, and by the way, we can create new solid, black solid, and let's put that as our last layer. It will be our just background, so you know, deep glow and every other effect will look better when we have black background instead of just transparent composition. Now also, as you can see, we have this animation for 10 years ago text, so let's create this animation. It should start probably somewhere here. Okay, let's use text evo again for this one. So let's apply text evo, then let's go to change based on mode to words. Okay, delay to probably like 8, then go to transform, of course opacity to 0. Okay, should be ready. Yeah, it looks perfect. Now, as you can see, our movement is ending here, so we want to keep that movement. Remember, one of the most important things in creating animation is to keep movement for all of our animation. Always should be movement. It shouldn't be just on screen and nothing just happening. We need to keep movement for all animation, so let's link another null here. And actually we can create first keyframe here and second on, I don't know, somewhere maybe there, and just change here position a little, just zoom here a little. Okay, so there will be movement still after end of all other movements. Okay, and with that, design and animation for our first part of animation is 100% done. Now let's add here final touches, and after final touches for our first part, we'll move to our second part of this animation. Okay, so for final touches, firstly let's create new adjacent layer, then let's add here deep glow, and radius let's change to 500 and exposure to 0.2. Then let's add another adjustment layer, and on other adjustment layer let's add CC vignette here, and let's change amount to 230. Angle of view, let's leave with basic setting. Then another effect is going to film damage with basic settings. Okay, another effect is going to be CC radial blur. Okay, this one. And now let's change type to straight zoom, amount to like 5. Okay, so we just created zoom on the edges of our screen. Now also we can add on the same adjacent layer CC lens. By the way, effect that I'm creating right now is free version of what we was doing with chromatic aberration effect, but I decided that not every one of you can have this because it's not so easy to find crack for chromatic aberration plugin. So I just created that like free version of this for you guys. And for CC lens, let's change size to 200 and this convergence to 25. Okay, like that. And the last effect is going to be posterize time, and from few last tutorials I use for this Houston Cold style 12 frame rate instead of 16, which I was using before, because 20 is even cleaner. Okay, and with that actually our first part of animation is done. Let's check how it looks like. Okay, and as you can see, it looks exactly as we wanted. It looks perfect. Like all animations, transitions and final touches are insanely smooth. Okay, so after that, let's pre-compose all of these elements for our first part. Let's name that actually first part. Okay, and now let's add here second part of animation. So it's going to be these images with people in front of screens with text, there are millions of people. Okay, so of course we need to create first composition. Let's name that part 2 also. Okay, and here let's add few images. Okay, I uploaded 6 images. You can find this type of graphics on Google, or you can ask ChatGPT or Gemini to create that for you, so it's not like huge problem. Now we can zoom all of these images. Okay, something like this. Let's zoom another one, then another one, another one. Okay, almost last one. Okay, now it's last one. Perfect. Now all of these 3 images should appear in first second. So let's place them on our first second on timeline. Exactly like that. By the way, these 2 images are so similar that I think I will decide to delete one, so we'll have just 5 images. Let's adjust positions on timeline, okay, to something like this. Right now, the most important thing is going to be our CC and final touches, so actually I'm going to do that right now. Firstly, let's create new adjustment layer and let's add here curves effect, and let's create graph like this. Now another adjustment layer, and let's add here tip glow, radius to 500 and exposure to 0.35. Then let's add another adjustment layer. Let's add their CC vignette and let's change amount to 200. Then let's add here film damage with basic settings on that. Okay, then it's going to be actually same effect as on our first part of animation, so I'm going to just copy that and paste exactly there. Okay, now we also need posterize time set to 12, and after that let's also add some effects on our images. We need to add here curves effect as well, this one, but this time graph should be something like this probably, or even this. And then also let's add here tint effect, okay, with basic setting. Now let's copy all these two effects and paste them on the rest of images. Now let's also adjust curves effect for the rest of our images. As you can see here, it's too bright, so let's just simply adjust that. Here maybe even we don't need this course. Okay, it should be similar to first one. Here also we can delete course effect. Here let's leave that as it's right now. Here we can also leave that. Now last but not least effect is going to be looks, and we are going to do a lot right now in this software. You need to click here on edit, okay, and then you will see this magic bullet looks window exactly there. And now go to tools and let's add here some effects. Okay, so let's add here colorista, this thing, and here let's change shadows to blue, probably. Blue looks better with colorista, so I'm going to use blue effect here, and then by using hue saturation effect I will change that back to red, so don't worry. Okay, this we can leave like that. Okay, and our second thing which we want to add is S-curves, and by that we will add here more contrast. Okay, let's go with this type of graph, and now it's actually ready. Let's click here to apply this for our looks, and as I said, we will change color by changing hue saturation to probably something like this. Okay, as you can see, we need to adjust some of our images by changing curves, something a little darker. Okay, to something probably like this here. Okay, here also something like that. Here it's good. Okay, here as well. Now what we want to add is going to be this. There are millions of people texts, but before that, as you can see, we have also in zoom animation here. So actually let's create 3D layers for these 2D layers. Okay, then let's click here to create new camera, then let's link new null to this camera, and let's change here position. Let's create 2 keyframes. Our first keyframe, let's change this to something like that. Go to graph editor, go to speed graph, and let's change that to something like this. Also we can go to CC vignette and let's change amount to like 300 maybe from 200. Okay, now let's add these texts. So there are millions of people. Let's add new text layer, and font which we want to add here is PT Sans regular. Okay, this one, and let's start of course from there are. Okay, let's change here this to something like that. Just letters should be closer to each other. Okay, now let's move this layer below all adjacent layers. Now let's click here to create 3D layer from this 2D layer. Now let's make that smaller. Now let's add here animation. We are going to use text evo again, and again based on mode should be on words. Okay, like that. Delay, let's set this time to like 3, and also let's change graph here because it should be a lot of faster animation, so our graph should be a lot sharper, something like this. Then of course I almost forget about the most important thing, of course, to change opacity from 100 to 0. Okay, after that let's cut this text layer somewhere here, and let's copy that, and let's change position of this duplicated text layer on our timeline somewhere there. Okay, and let's change here this text from there are to millions of. Okay, then duplicate that again. Let's put this duplicated text layer exactly at the place on the timeline where our second text layer is ending, and here let's change that to people. Okay, exactly like this, and with that, second part of our animation is officially done. Let's see how it looks like. Okay, as you can see, it looks very good. It's not exactly like on my first try of recreating that, because actually creating that color correction exactly same is pretty hard, but it's very similar. I think that it's a little even better. Okay, so after our second part is done, we need to combine these two parts with each other. Okay, we are going to use to that here this flicker transition also, but for now let's go to main composition where we have our first part already, and let's also put here our part 2 composition. Let's move our part 2 composition to third second mark on our timeline. Okay, so exactly there. And now also I want to add here this transition. To do that, of course, we need to create new accent layer. Okay, we can actually cut that in the both of sides like this. Okay, and to this transition I'm going to use flicker and fastbox blur effects. Okay, let's start from fastbox blur maybe like this. Let's create first keyframe here, second probably like 5 frames on the left, and third keyframe at the end of this adjacent layer. Okay, and just on our middle keyframe let's change this blur radius to 7. Okay, now also let's create here graphs. It should be something like this. Okay, now it's perfect. Now also let's add this flicker. Let's create keyframes for amplitude in exact same places as keyframes for fastbox blur. Okay, and on our third and first keyframe for amplitude we need to set this amplitude to 0, but on our middle keyframe let's set amplitude to 1. Okay, and with that our whole animation is 100% done, is completed. Let's check how it looks like then. Okay, and as you can see, our animation is perfect. It looks exactly how I want it. And of course, if you like that video, you can give a like and subscribe my channel for more content. I will not take you more time. Bye.